Welcome back to another episode of the Scholar Budget podcast, where we help students like you to earn a debt-free degree. And so students, parents, listen, I know that sometimes thinking about college, going to college, the whole process can be overwhelming and daunting, but I want to let you know and to encourage you to utilize the resources, the people resources, the programs, the nonprofit organizations that are in your area and available to help you. And so one of the amazing programs that I know is a great resource for students and parents is Uprooted Academy. And so our guest today is Tiffany Green, who is a licensed psychotherapist and expert college counselor. She founded Uprooted Academy, which is a nonprofit ed tech company designed to give students courage, confidence, and competitiveness in the college application process. Focusing on her passion for understanding and helping alleviate educational anxiety for students, this college readiness program incorporates mental well-being and social emotional learning while affirming different parts of a student's identity. Tiffany earned her graduate degree in counseling psychology from Howard University and her undergraduate degree from the University of Connecticut. So not only should you take notes on today's podcast, but I really want you to connect with the Uprooted Academy because this is an amazing resource that will help you alleviate some of the anxiety, some of the overwhelm that comes with getting ready to go to college. Let's jump You're listening to the Scholar Budget podcast, where we teach you how to earn a debt-free degree, grow your money, and claim every opportunity with your name on it. I'm your host, Raquel Bartoli. Let's jump right in. Hello, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we're so grateful that you've joined us, and we're so excited about all the information that you're going to bring to our listeners. So, Tiffany, tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you so much. So I am Tiffany. I am the founder and CEO of Uprooted Academy. We are a nonprofit organization that uses tech to really scale our impact. I think we started out as college access, but as you know, and we all know, it's more than that. It's a holistic support, which is why we bring in speakers like you to help students financially. And really, we have digitized the community center. So if any of you who are listening grew up in like the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA, and you remember that building structure, well, we have made it an immersive platform for students to go in and engage. And so we hope to be the Costco of all resources so kids can design their dreams.
I love it. The Costco of all resources.
Yes.
That's tag right there.
I'll make sure to like hit up my IP lawyer to trademark that.
And how did you get into this field? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Great question. I think it's so funny. I recently found out that 17-year-old Tiffany, right before she graduated high school, I had to do a project where I had to start a company. I was a part of this organization called the Academy of Finance. And so our capstone was to start a company. And my mom, who hoards everything, kept this pamphlet of mine from now over 20 years ago that said that my final project was to open up a community center to help kids apply to college.
Look at that.
And she was like, look at this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no clue that I had done it. I'm sure at that point I had senioritis. I just wanted to be done, right? But it was something intuitive to me that I always enjoyed helping my friends fill out their applications. When I was in college, I was the kid that had all my 4-year plan done. I knew my courses and I would help other people. I'm like, oh, you could do this. You could double major. You could do all these things.
I love it.
And really worked in education for 15 years, both in higher ed and in high schools in the US and overseas, and really found this place that was still a gap, right? Students like me, first gen, low income, students of color, were still struggling navigating the college process. And so since I had like picked up all of this information and social capital, I felt like maybe I might be able to assist in moving the needle with the work that I have done in the past. And so that's kind of how I got into it, a little bit by accident and obviously a little bit by destiny. So
Yeah, I think that seed was already planted and then mom reminded you And then it
Oh,
just went from there. So
it
I know
did.
that the students and families that have benefited from your program are happy that you didn't give up. So yeah.
Yeah, I do it for them for sure because and I think of them. I think the best part about this work is I am the kid that I serve now, right? Like, or I
Right.
was the kid that I currently serve. And so it's deeper than just like a business model. It's like, man, what if I had more resources, more support, more information? Where would I be today? And so it does drive this commitment to think about the future Tiffany's in this
Mm,
world and how I could best assist to make sure that they are not under resourced.
absolutely. And so, Tiffany, what advice do you have for students in navigating the process of selecting a college that really aligns with their goals, values, and finances?
Yeah. I think people, when they're selecting colleges, and we talk a lot about this in like our curriculum and our platform, is there's like a three-prong approach, right? Like you should find schools that I think in 2024, because of the type of world that we live in, that fits who you are and your identity, right? Will
Right.
they like serve you well? Do they have resources for you? And that identity can be anything from like your background, like your race or your ethnicity or sexuality, but also like what is your background in terms of your mental health needs or learning challenges. Do they have systems in place to help you succeed, and is it a place that's welcoming for you? I think we're
Mm,
seeing so much of the research now of like students outside of finances are leaving schools because of mental health. And so, because we know it's mental health, like you need to make sure you go somewhere that facilitates you, especially your identity. Are they welcoming to you, or do you have to deal with
right.
microaggressions? But then also, do they have all the supports? The second thing that you should look for, unfortunately, it shouldn't be a thing, but it is the finances, right? I think we're talking about an institution like universities that is designed, or we hope it is designed to help you, close the racial wealth gap or to make more money or to move up economically. And so if you're putting yourself in position to
Hmm.
go deep, deep, deep into debt for this education, is it actually doing that? Right. And so looking at it financially, we're going to talk, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but not getting sticker shock, right? I always tell people like the sticker price is a sticker price, but there's always a coupon. And whether that coupon comes internally from the school or externally from some other organization, the sticker price can be a little bit deceiving because you might have a school that looks cheaper but gives less money than a school that
Right.
looks really expensive and can provide you with a full ride. And so, secondly, so we have your social kind of identity component. You'll have your financial component, and then thirdly, you should have academics. I
Mm,
think the average amount of time students change their major is like 6 to 8. And
right.
so you should find a place that like has a few different things that you're interested in. And some like exploratory options too. But academics really is probably my third choice, unless you want to do something really, really niche. And that something niche is something you feel like without this particular school, you can't do it. But most schools, if they're teaching you something in an engineering program at one school and they're not doing it at another, something's wrong, right? All of those
Mhm.
things should be standard.
Right.
And so academics will be like my third component. So you have your social, cultural, your financial, and your academic.
Right. And I think sometimes students don't realize that all those pieces matter. So you can
Mm-hmm.
afford the school, but if they don't have mental health resources and other resources that fit your needs, then you're more than likely to drop out, take a
Yeah.
break, because they can't provide for you. So thank you for pointing that out for our listeners.
Yeah.
And so for students considering the financial aspect, which you've already kind of touched on,
Mm-hmm.
what strategies do you recommend for saving money on college expenses? And I like how you mentioned coupons. So
Oh yeah.
lots more of that.
Yeah, right. So um college is expensive, and not only is the components like tuition and if you live on campus is expensive, but then there's some other costs that we coin like indirect costs that are not given financial aid awards for, and that includes things like your books or if you want to hang out with your friends because it is a social environment, so you should have
Right.
a little dollar here or there, right? I think about my uncles who are like, let me give you $5, right? Those $5 don't go as far anymore, right? Exactly. I was gonna say that $5 doesn't go as far, but you do need to have that. And then I think the other thing that people don't often take account, especially if you go to school really far. So I live in Los Angeles. A lot of our students want to go to HBCUs, which we know are mostly going to be towards the East Coast of the US. And
Right.
so now we're talking about adding in $2,000 for travel, because what students don't often know is, okay, you have to get to campus and then there's campus shutdown. So I was a resident director in grad school, and then I worked at a university as my first career after grad school. And there are weeks where schools are like, everybody has to leave campus. And if
Right.
you're like living around the corner or even like a bus ride away, it's one thing. But if you need to fly across country, you need to take account that you're going to go home at least 3 times, right?
Mm,
So you're going to get to campus for the beginning of the school year. You need to leave for the holiday break, and then you need to come back home in May. And so
right.
those are things that probably you could save for. So to answer your question, like what are some things that I think about? The first thing is, if your financial aid award letter has a work study, component or a line item, go for it.
Right.
Never, ever, ever add in work study as part of your ability to pay for school. And this is why. Work study is a presumed amount of money that they believe that you can earn if you do a couple things. One, find a job. And
Mhm.
sometimes work study jobs on campuses are not in abundance, right?
Right.
And so you might not actually find the job, which means you actually don't get the money. And number
Mm,
two, it means that you have time to work, right? And that you're gonna work and you're gonna make the money. But the money doesn't come to you in the beginning of the term. So when the school is like, we want our money, and you're like, yeah, but this work study, like, yeah, work for it, right?
I
And
need
so
it.
we need it now. That is good for you. So if you have work study on your financial aid award letter, I would highly recommend this summer before you even get to college to just start calling offices, calling admissions, calling tutoring centers. You can do really admin based stuff, and they have work study students all the time. If you're into sports, call the athletic department, see if they have a work study position. And
Right.
that honestly is the best way. There is a lot of data around how many hours students should be working on campus to still be able to consider themselves like a student and could focus on school. And so I would always recommend the first step is to find a job on campus, it's most convenient, especially if you
Mm,
have work study, and then use that money for those indirect costs, hanging out with friends, buying a pair of sneakers. Like you deserve to be able to buy something while you're in school, and to also cover your travel and your books, because those things are not included in your tuition and fees. So that
mm.
would be one of the main things that I always recommend to students.
Beautiful. And just that time management is always important, like when you're working and being able to focus on your academics. So self-awareness is key.
Self awareness is key. And not only key for students, but I think one of the things that we try to do is like really work with families. Because if you know your student struggled in high school, you might not want to put the pressure on them to work their first or second term in college.
Right. Right.
Because and you have to be the adult and kind of like name that for them. They might think like, oh, my friends are doing it. Their friends might have different capacity levels. And so I would also say not only should students be self-aware, but especially the first couple of years, like, parents are like, should be pointing their kids as if they're arrows into the right direction, and they know the strength. And this is not the time to tell your kid to prove you wrong. Like,
Right. Yeah. Not today.
not now, right? Like, let them learn the lesson later, but kind of like carry them and help them and say, you know what, I really want you to focus this term on your school, and maybe next term you get a job. And so I think it just speaks back to like our overarching theme of like affordability, right? Like if a student has to work a whole bunch of hours in order to pay, you might want to go back to those three components. Yes, it's a good
Wow.
cultural social fit. Maybe it's not a good financial fit, and the burden of what is going to be on the student will then make it not a good academic fit because they're not going to thrive in the classroom.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if there's two things clashing, like time plus management, academics, maybe it's better to talk about community college, which is
Mhm.
my next question.
Yeah.
So, community college is often seen as a more affordable option. So how does Uprooted Academy help students explore those benefits and consider what a community college has to offer? Because I feel like sometimes a community college is, like, oh, it's not for me type of thing. So what
Mhm.
does Uprooted Academy do to help students with community college and their thought process around that?
I think we hope that all students find the right path that fits for them, right?
Okay.
And that they're not undermatching. And that's key. So I'm going to say a little bit of like Tiffany's thoughts. And even though like I run the company, I still have a team, we still have like ethos, right? Like they're still the same thought, but I just want to give like some context, right? If I have a student, and we encounter this a lot, especially in our high schools out here in Southern California, and we have a student who has a like competitive GPA, right? And that competitive GPA, plus like they have good activities, they would be a really, really good fit for a 4-year institution, whether a UC school, which are really great anyway, like UCLA,
Mm-hmm.
UC Berkeley, or a private school. That private school could be an HBCU, or it can be something like going somewhere like Wesleyan College in Connecticut. If that student who is high achieving, right, and they most likely might qualify for like Pell or really good financial aid, if that particular student is at a community college, we failed them.
Mm.
We have failed them because that student, we know the community college in terms of graduation rates are a lot lower.
Right.
This student has a capacity to be somewhere else, and it might actually be even more affordable. Because remember, that sticker price is not always a price that you'll pay. And
Right.
much more selective institutions, especially with a student with that profile, high achieving, good test scores, etc., they will probably go to school for free,
Mm.
end up with a 4-year degree, and can do that. Now, the only caveat that we talk about in our organization is like, oh, if that kid has to help out financially at home and it makes sense that they need to go to a 2-year school to stay in school. It's like either they go to 2-year school or they go nowhere at all. We're like, yes, put them in there. If a
Okay.
student did not have really strong grades in high school, absolutely. Let's put you in a 2-year school. See if you even want to do school even more. Maybe you
Right.
need to do a trade or another pathway program, and those are okay too. As long as these students are thinking about like stackable degrees, right? And even, I met with this individual who just graduated from NYU, amazing school. And even when she finished, she realized she still needed more. She wanted to go into product marketing to work for an ed tech company.
Okay.
And that took her to doing a 1-year boot camp. And so we're not talking about like, either or. We have
Mm.
to move into this space of like stackable degrees. So even
I
if a
like.
student wants to go to a 2-year school, it's like, what is your end goal? Is your end
Mm-hmm.
goal to transfer? Is your end goal to get a job? Then we need to set you up for success. So if your end goal is to get a job after these 2 years, let's put you in some apprenticeship. Let's get you some internships, like those sorts of things to keep you motivated.
I
If
like.
your goal is to go to a 4-year school, let's start talking about articulation agreements and hey, how do we set you up and like think about beginning with the end in mind? So
Mm-hmm.
for us, we don't care where you go. You design your own future. Like we advise, you decide. Like that is where we live in
I
this
like.
world, right?
Have
We
fun with it.
advise. Yes, right. Like we advise, you decide. However, we do want to make sure that especially our Black and Brown students, that our most talented ones are in the places that they belong because they actually can probably have a better financial aid package and probably better longer term outcomes, knowing what we know about graduation rates.
Okay.
I think that is really my answer. If a student, like I said, if they have like pregnancy or like other housing issues or issues like things at home or even immigration status, like sometimes that's their option. Go, but still, let's go with a plan. I think historically, community college was like the default. Like, oh, I didn't go anywhere else, so I'm going to go here. It's like, no, no,
Right.
no. We tell our students like, chest back. You're going to like Long Beach City College.
There you go.
And that's where you chose. Like you had all your faculties. This is not a plan B. This is your plan. And so I
Right.
think we could like still celebrate every single plan as long as students understand that they had all options.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like when a whole district of a school that's full of like, especially folks of color and marginalized folks, and everyone's told to go to the community college.
Right. Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
those are the things that I'm like, like there should be some students that will always be there will always be the students who don't want to go to college at all. We're always going to have that. We're always going to have the students that go to community college. We're always going to have the ones that want to go to state schools, private HBCUs. But as long as students feel like they have options and you're not predicting it for them based off of what you think that they can and cannot do, I'm
Mm-hmm.
all for it.
I love it. I
Because
mean,
then
you
it's
just
about their agency.
nailed it. And that knowing your path and having advisement to help you see the end goal is really important. And
Yep.
keeping in mind that the end goal could change too. Because like you mentioned, students are changing their major like all the time. So
All the time.
yeah, having that advisement and
Hmm.
again, why we're grateful that Uprooted Academy exists, so that students and parents and families can have access to these resources. And so, speaking of resources, when it comes to like financial resources,
Mm.
what tools does Uprooted Academy provide to help students and their families understand and plan for the costs associated with higher education?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think at a free level, right? Like what we provide families and what we're hoping to even do more of is even little things like understanding how important your grades are ninth grade year, right? Like just from your grades alone, you can get money,
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
we actually, if you can't save, I mean, college is so expensive. Like even if everyone saves all their pennies, right? Like they still might not be able to afford it at the end of the day, right? Even the most responsible people are really struggling. However, I think sometimes students think like, oh, my ninth grade courses don't matter, or parents and students, we might tell them like, make sure if you're looking at STEM to think about these courses. If your school doesn't offer it, supplement it with a community college course. Like while you're in high school, you can't get into an AP class, you can still take a dual enrollment course,
Right.
right? So like those sorts of things matter. The other thing that we do advise students to do, because it's unfortunate, but it's still the system that we live in, merit-based funding, not all funding, but a lot of merit-based funding come from PSAT scores. So we
Yeah.
actually make sure that our parents know what classes your students should be in, especially math and English, prior to taking PSAT scores so they can have a really good score. That
Mm,
score opens up so many doors, right?
right.
Because it's a domino effect. The more things that you do academically and then civically and like socially, then now we can talk about pre-college programs because you have the grades. Pre-college programs are an easy pathway for you to understand how to get to schools for free. If you go to
Mhm.
Lita's like house at Princeton, all of those students are going to college for free,
Right.
right? Like, because then you get access to individualized counseling from folks who want to see you get into these places, right?
Right.
They know all of the pathways, they know all the scholarships. The other thing that we try to do, even if money is not possible to be saved in the bank account, is we tell students to write their college essays. And it's funny, we're going to be working with some high schools. Well, we already are in the high schools, but we're getting ready to pivot to working with their juniors. And all of them know, pull all the students with this GPA and higher from
Right.
now until May, they're going to finish all of their essays for next year.
Wow, they're doing it early. That's awesome.
Absolutely, because that's what the private schools are doing, right? When I worked at a charter school that was like the number 20 school in the country, our students had their first draft of their essay done before they went home junior year.
Wow.
And this is why we're doing it. And you know this best. We're doing it because when you look at the bigger scholarships, the deadlines for those scholarships are going to be between August, September, October. If
Hmm.
you have a student who is taking maybe more rigorous courses their senior year, trying to figure out their college application list, trying to write their college essay, and
Right.
trying to apply to these competitive scholarships, something's going to fall by the wayside. And the number one thing that probably will is going to be the scholarships.
Yeah.
And so for us, again, we recognize that not all of our families can actually save pennies. But if they can save this cultural capital, this social capital to say, oh, let me make sure my kids in the right courses. Let me make sure I'm supplementing other opportunities for them outside of that. When my kid comes home with a flyer and says, "Oh, mom, there's this weekend program around STEM. Let me do it so I can like emphasize that on their, activity list or their awards or their participation. Oh, let me just make sure during the summer I'm checking in with their essay. So that way, when the scholarships come up, the kid has actual time and mental capacity to do them. The other
Absolutely.
thing that we teach our parents to do is like, listen, I feel like my parents, they loved me, but I felt like sometimes they were like, if you want it, you got to go and get it. I'm like,
Right.
listen,
Sure.
you are the co-pilot of this kid.
Hmm.
They are 16, they're 17. And just like I said, like before with the whole like working on campus, like this is not the time to make your kid prove that they can manage a project, right? They're not project managers. They don't have a PMP certification. They don't have any of that, right? And it's like, hey, humble yourself as a parent and be their secretary. You look up the scholarships, put it on the thing. Just because you're doing it doesn't mean that they don't want it. They just can't even fathom having all
Hmm.
of these things. So sometimes we do let them know, like, we do programs set up a savings account, 529 plan, understanding how to do, make sure you do your taxes so you can qualify for FAFSA. We do all that stuff. But for many
Right.
of our folks, they don't have anything extra. But what they could do is if they just had knowledge, because what do
Yeah.
you hear parents say all the time, man, if I just known to do that, I would
Yeah.
have done it. And so for
Absolutely.
us, we just try to give them that social and that cultural capital because that can be priceless later.
Absolutely. Well, shout out to Uprooted Academy, like out here helping these parents. And listen, as a parent, struggling sometimes. There's so much information. So I get it being
It's
on both ends, being that person trying to help students secure scholarship money, but then
mhm.
also being the parent knowing that this is coming my way. So can I join Uprooted Academy when I get there? 'Cause-
You are an honorary member, okay? You are honorary, and we will gladly welcome you because, I was just thinking, I think about this in terms of social capital because one of my board members is someone named Ronald Pierce. Ronald was my very first student that I had when I first worked at a university. This is like 15 years ago. So finished grad school, worked at a university, and of course I was like one of the only like Black folks that were there. And so I taught undergrad and grad psych. I worked in the counseling center, and so all of them would like come to my office all the time. So now he's on my board of directors because he works
That's so
in
cool.
finance. Yes. And I remember when he came in, he wanted to do music. And he was like, man, but I don't know if this is going to have longevity. I'm thinking about my future. So he ended up double majoring in business. And immediately I called my friend Tamika, who, full circle moment, she's also on my board. She's my best friend from high school. And she is in leadership at Discover Financial. And so it's so interesting because when she called him, she told him one word and she said, inroads. Now, that's a word that I don't know because I wasn't a business major, but she said, get in at inroads because 99% of those students who are in inroads in undergrad have a job even before their senior year begins.
Oh, wow.
And he did that and he is thriving, right? He's on my board and now they work together for my financial side of my board and it's a full circle moment. But I said that to say because how many of us know people who go to business school thinking like, oh, it's a guaranteed job. And then when they're in the job market post graduation, they're like, all the jobs are gone. It's like, yes, because if you didn't have the social capital to join programs and organizations prior to that could say inroads, then you miss it and that opportunity never comes again. Right
Right.
now, it is February because of the FAFSA delays. It's not happening yet. But once April comes, you're going to have all of these students who realize I need $20,000 more. And those $20,000 scholarships were there,
Right.
but
But
they are done. They've
yeah.
already been allocated. And that's the problem. When we get to give our parents and students social capital to say, hey, the majority of your larger scholarships are going to be due before October 31st.
Hmm.
Now they're looking for them. If you don't know that, you're going to think like, oh, I
I
got
have
my
to.
financial, I have time. I'm going to
Right.
apply after I figure it out. And then you start seeing, oh, it's just a five. And listen, $500 ones add up. But you
Right.
could have had these ones had you
If you
known,
really, yeah,
and
yeah.
those ones are gone. And so when you put yourself in the right ecosystem, in the right pipeline, whether that's connected to programs like yours or ours or both, because we get to work together, it's like you just get the information. And when people know more, they do more. We're
Right.
not looking for them because people just assume like, okay, not going to stress my student out. They're going to get through their exams, get through their applications, and then we'll look for scholarships.
Hmm.
Everybody thinks that. We'll look for scholarships
Not gonna
after
happen.
they're gone outside of the church ones and the local ones. Yeah, listen, because the church one came through,
Yes. Thank you, Jesus.
right? The church
There's
one was there,
opportunity.
but it wasn't the Quest Bridge or the Posse or
Right.
the Gates or all
Right.
of these other ones. I'm like, man,
Yeah. And I try to tell students and parents that it is a process. So from, ninth grade, you can start list building, like
yes.
building out lists of scholarships that you are looking forward to applying to.
Mm,
And because, like you said, senior year is an overwhelming year,
yeah.
those scholarships get pushed to the side. So again, Uprooted Academy is doing their thing. And I know you kind of mentioned a success story from a student that you had, but can you share like a success story of one of your students that came through Uprooted Academy and kind of they're just shining bright right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So We have a student, Valeria. She came through our program, New York based, and we offer a program again, Social Capital, where we actually provide free one-on-one counseling for students. And so we'll intake them. They'll be under our wing for the 6 months. We expose them to all these different things. And she was a beauty. And she worked with Antonia, who you got to meet. Antonia at the time was my intern at Uprooted before she worked for us full time. I grabbed her quick because she's so amazing. And
Yeah.
and she had this amazing story, this amazing essay. She was always bright. Like oftentimes these are all the students that we work with are normally amazing students, but they just need some guidance and some belief and someone to say, oh no, you can do this. And so for me, it was a beautiful moment because both Valeria and Antonia are both Latinas whose families came to the US. They had to be the translator for the family. So it was just like a match made in heaven,
Right.
because I feel like they got to see each other. And I
Right.
think that's really important too in this work is that we do try to make sure our students are seen. And she's at Columbia right now, full ride, and she's doing it. And think about what that means for her family. And Tony is also a really amazing success story too. Same as Valeria, her family came here. She, was a translator for her family and went to Harvard. Right. And look at where she's able to do with her own self. Her 3 children went through college. And so for us, it's not just about these students, right? Like we're not taking that individualistic approach. It's a multi-generational impact.
Yeah.
Right. So like Valeria gets to do this and then her cousins now get to do it. Her family's better off, right? They're not stressed. She was always bright, but we know so many bright people who are untapped in their potential because they
Yeah.
just don't have someone to walk alongside of them. In terms of a financial story, out here in LA at some of our high schools. This year, we got students into Posse, to Questbridge. Yes!
I love that. Because those are some pretty awesome programs. So
Listen, they are set, they
yeah.
are so set. And, it's interesting. We work a lot with families, especially in our direct impact in LA and Long Beach. And, we're also working with parents because even though they're
Beautiful.
set, you have no idea how sometimes parents are like, oh, I know they got in, I know it's free, but I don't want them to leave. I'm like,
Mhm. You
I'm
got
like,
my
you got to let them go. And also, they're not your social emotional holder of your needs. You need to connect with others. So we try to connect them with other people. But these are people who their parents don't have to worry. They can watch their kid fly. They have full rides.
uh,
And so, yeah, so those are some of the ones. We're going to highlight some of those students, especially the Questbridge and Posse ones, probably soon. But it's so funny. It's like that we'll go into the school and they're like, I don't want to look. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want us to do? Right? You want us to look? I'm like, listen, you know what? If we don't get it, we can handle it,
right.
because I think this is important to say even here. It's like whether you get into the school or you get the scholarship, like at the end of the day, those things don't make you.
Right.
You are you. You can keep going. We can, one of the things our students know and they say all the time is like, Tiffany says we can handle hard emotions. We absolutely can. We're not going to crumble. These things don't uphold us. They're just allowed through us so that way we can do the thing that we want to do. But
Absolutely.
we're not going to get confused that like without this thing we are nothing. Like
Right.
absolutely not, right? And
Right.
so we get to see all of the forest, right? We get to see all of the big picture, our intellect. But it is really great to celebrate those students and knowing that the financial burden is off the table.
Yeah. And that's huge as a parent and a student. Like you can literally just go to college and just be a
And
student, be
B.
engaged, be involved. And not a lot of students get to just be. So
Yeah.
before we close out, is there any other last nuggets, gems, words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Mm. Great question. I feel like I should have thought about this. I feel like for I think something I would love, especially before students get to become seniors, and whether you're a student or a parent listening, for me, allow yourself to build the muscle of risk taking. Because what we find is even when a student has all the resources like Valeria did when we gave her like the hand, right? Even when you have that, if a student is afraid of the outcome, they actually won't try. We can
That's
lay out and say Posse is available, QuestBridge is available, the Dell Scholarship is available. We can lay it out, but if they're afraid of failure, they're not going to do it. So social capital is one piece, knowing, but then there's this emotional capital. And so my background's, as a clinician. So for me, I'm always thinking
I'm
about
in therapy right now. Like I just gotta listen. Therapy, I feel it. I feel it in my system. So keep going.
yeah, it's like we have to give students the abilities early to take risks. And
Mm-hmm.
that risk can be good. They can be calculated. They're not dangerous. They have discomfort, but it's not danger. And so
Right.
if you're a parent and you see your student, or if you're a student and you hear about something, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do the same. Ask yourself why. What would it mean if I don't get it? Nothing. What would it mean
Right.
if I do? Maybe something, but it still doesn't change who I am. And so
Right.
I think on top of the social capital, which they'll get, especially if they're following you, right? They're getting all this stuff. I still think there's an element where kids are fight, flighting, or freezing in this process because they're not taught early on to do little things. And when I say take a risk, I mean, raise your hand in class when you're not sure if the answer is correct.
Right.
If someone invites you to go camping, just try it. Like, get out your comfort zone. Have a little
Mm-hmm.
discomfort. Discomfort is okay. Danger, not so much. If it's danger,
Right.
you run. But this is not danger, right? This is
Right.
discomfort.
Taking action. That's what
And
it is.
yeah, so I think that would be the only other thing I can think about is while we can solve for social capital, we still need to develop students' muscles to be uncomfortable and taking a risk knowing it's not guaranteed.
Mm.
Not guaranteed they're going to get it, because we want you to do all of those things, because if you start building that muscle, who knows, you'll study abroad, maybe you'll move abroad, you'll come
Oh,
back, you'll start a company. That's what I did, right? I was just like,
take all the
because
risks.
all the risk, because you know what, if it doesn't work out, we could pivot.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
It's totally
okay.
okay.
So yeah, that's
Beautiful.
it.
I feel healed already from I feel healed. I'm ready to go out there and help more students. I love
Let's
it.
go.
My goodness. Listen, I so appreciate this information. I'm going to put all your contact information for Uprooted Academy so that our parents and students can connect with you and tap into what you're doing. I'm pushing out this episode like next week, and I know you
Yay.
have a career fair that's coming up. What
Yes.
date is that?
Okay, that is so great. I totally forgot about that. March 16th, completely free. It's two and a
Beautiful.
half hours. It's in our immersive platform, so it's not Zoom. You can hang out. We'll have scavenger hunts, giveaways. It's super immersive. It's almost like you're in a conference center. And this is another good way to understand financial. We have over 80 people confirmed. So students, when they sign up, they'll pick one of 12 clusters. If you're interested in health sciences, law and justice, regular sciences, engineering, technology, arts and
Nice.
sciences, performance, you'll pick that cluster. And then you'll hear from professors for the first hour. What will you learn? Why will I get this degree? What will this degree
Right.
offer me? What are the classes? And then you'll meet with professors. And listen, ask these professors what they make. I mean, these professionals what they make.
Right.
Because if you're thinking about like financial literacy and understanding, awareness is key. Many
Yeah.
of us don't have an Uncle Johnny to be like, hey, what is it like to be a mechanical engineer? You got new Uncle Johnnies. They're going to be there. Okay. So show up. We got you. We got the whole community going to be there to help you out. And I also encourage parents to come talk to your student. Hey, what's your first choice? What's your second? Okay, you go sit in on the first one. I'm going to sit on the second one. Then we can come back and chit chat and we could talk about it. And it's open to 9th to 12th graders, as well as any student that might have graduated and still are not sure. The information is going to be the information. So
Beautiful. Yeah, well, we're going to plug that in. And so,
yay.
Tiffany, thank you so much. Like, this is really, really great information that I know that our students and our parents appreciate you, but we appreciate you a ton. So thank you so much and
Thank
enjoy your
you.
day. Hey there. I hope you were taking notes and you're ready to implement what you heard. If this podcast inspired you or helped you in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, follow, and share this with a student, parent, or educator you care about, because sharing is caring. Also, your feedback means a lot. So please leave a written review of this show on Apple Podcasts. And if you ever want to connect outside of the podcast, you can find us at The Scholar Budget on Insta or the Book of Faces. So until next time, shine bright and put in the work so we can make those dreams a reality. Bye!